Welcome to the Young Crones Cafe, where you can get a magic brew full of all sorts of information, both witchy and practical.
Grab a cup of coffee and join us. I'm Elizabeth, a wordsmith.
And I'm Dave, a modern-day sage.
We are going to talk about various witchcraft and life topics from a slightly more mature perspective, at least most of the time.
Thanks for joining us.
Here's a little something extra from the Young Crones Cafe to get you through until our next regularly scheduled podcast. I'm going to talk to you about a crazy concept that came to my mind last night after a phone call. Decluttering, and specifically decluttering your spiritual practice. I got a call from a young man who is kind of like one of these adopted kids that I seem to have collected over the years who calls me mom. He was out of town for a funeral for his uncle and ended up spending an extra 2 weeks there because they had to clean out his house from where he'd lived for many years in order to prepare it for sale. Now, this gentleman who passed was not a hoarder, but he had accumulated a bunch of stuff over the years that nobody else needed or wanted anymore in that respect. So it had to be disposed of in all sorts of different ways in order to make the house livable for someone else to come in. And I'm a big fan of decluttering. I tend to set up my desk area in a certain way, and things have to be organized so that I can easily reach and find things when I'm sitting here trying to write or do any other kind of anything at my desk. And I regularly mentally declutter because I am one of these who gets caught up in the minutia of what I'm supposed to be doing every day by making a to-do list and dumping it all onto a piece of paper. And it frees up mental space for what I want to think about instead, which usually is a lot more fun than remember to pick up the kid from school at 3 o'clock today because he's getting out early kind of thing. To extrapolate from there, because we are entering on the path, the times of Samhain, which we associate with the element of water, and creating those better flows for ourselves of connection to our spiritual practice, maybe it's time for me to decluttering my spiritual practice in a bunch of ways. One thing I do is I keep my record book, for want of a better word, what we call the book of the seen and unseen, on my computer. And I can go through and organize all those miscellaneous files into folders and actually archive some of them in an archives folder that I don't use anymore, which will make it easier for me to contemplate what it is I actually do or want to do. Having just moved back home after a house fire and lacking most of the physical tools of witchcraft that we associate with practice, there are things I have to replace and things I don't have to replace anymore because they don't meet my needs for what I'm doing now. Have you looked at your tools and accoutrements like that lately? Box up the ones you don't use and donate them somewhere. Take them to your local metaphysical shop and ask if there's anybody who is new to the craft or just doesn't have the budget to afford some of the things you may not need anymore. And if you're going to go out and get new stuff, try and thrift stores and secondhand places and all of that and see what's available first. There's no point in paying for something brand new when very often something used is more beautiful anyway. But that's a sidebar. But back to decluttering. Sitting down and having a good look mentally at what I believe in nowadays. And does what I am practicing enhance those beliefs? Is what I am doing holding me back from expanding my knowledge of these beliefs? Do I need to shake up how I do ritual or how I write spells or how I think about things? It's another form of decluttering. The idea is in your spiritual practice, you have all sorts of things that you do and continue to do because that's the way you've always done them. Do they still serve you, or are they just cluttering up your spirituality and not allowing you to move forward in ways that will encourage your growth? I know the longer we have been on the path, the less complex our ritual words tend to be, or our actions, or even the ritual itself. We don't have to make it a big fancy ritual that's going to go on for hours and hours and hours all the time, even though those are occasionally fun to do just because of the spiritual experience it evokes. But why should I write 10 pages when I can say and do what I need to do and get the most benefit from something that's going to be a page and a half and take me 20 minutes instead of 2 hours? Decluttering, for want of a better word, can best be defined as getting rid of stuff that keeps you stuck or that interferes with your ability to do anything effectively. We're really big on, every Saturday cleaning up the house so that things are put away where they're supposed to be and we can find them again as a group. But how often do we do that for ourselves mentally in our own private thinking spaces? Do we get caught up with minutia? Or can we look at the bigger picture if we can put the minutia somewhere else, like I do with my to-do list? It's just something to think about. Decluttering on a regular basis or even annually, because I think I'm going to regularly practice a decluttering process of some sort during the times of Samhain going forward, may be beneficial. At least it's something to think about. And if nothing else, if you go through all the junk that you accumulate as part of your spiritual practice, it's amazing the bits and pieces of stuff that hangs around that we don't need anymore. At least you'll have room to put, and have a place to put new stuff. So with that being said, go forth and try decluttering. Send us an email, or send me an email, or Dave an email at elizabeth@twoyoungcrones.com, and that's the number 2, or dave@twoyoungcrones.com, and tell us what you tried and how it worked. We'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, however, may you find mirth and reverence in all things. Until our next podcast, have a blessed day. Well, it looks like the coffee cups are empty for this week. We hope you join us again next Tuesday. But you can find us at our website, twoyoungcrones.com. That's the number 2, Young Crones.
We'd love to have you join our growing online Discord community. Check out our new Patreon presence. Just look for Young Crones Cafe. Through Patreon, you'll be able to make it to our Discord. We are also Young Crones Cafe on Twitter and Facebook.
Until then, remember, we are witches who work with energies to effect change.
We are believers in both immanent and transcendent divine.
We are celebrants of the passage of the solar and lunar cycles.
We are hedge walkers who pass back and forth between the worlds of the magical and the mundane.
We are seekers of knowledge.
And we are walkers of a spiritual tradition we call the path.
So mote it be.
So mote it be.